Okay, good morning, DCA. How are you? It is Friday. Eileen would tell you she knows it's Friday because Mr. Simmons is ready for bowling. But we hope that you have a great week, or you had a great week. I know testing just finished, right? For some, that was really stressful. For others, maybe not so much. I don't know if this helps you or not, but students in Adventist schools across the country were doing that math testing this week as well. It wasn't just you guys here at DCA that were being picked on. So speaking of students at other Adventist academies, yesterday I had a little bit of free time and I like to see what other schools are doing. So I watched the chapel from GLA, I think that's how they pronounce it, stands for Great Lakes Adventist Academy, and it's in Michigan. But here's what I saw. I saw Brandon and Josiah standing up front doing chapel for all of their academy. So, let me make sure I don't miss anyone. Derek, Joshua, Christian, Kathy, Sarah, Amanda, Kayla. I think that's all of you. I have a challenge for you. April 2nd is the next day that I have chapel, and I would love to turn that over to you, the seniors, and let you be in charge of chapel that day. Plan the songs, the music, the speech, all of that. I'll get with you guys in the next couple of days, but here's what I think, right? If those kids in Michigan can do it, surely the seniors of DCA here in Texas can do it too. So we'll get with you and work out the details there. All right. So this morning I have some other friends here in the 7th and 8th grade room that are going to help. Haley, are you doing our scripture? All right, come on up. 91:7.
Okay. 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand.
All right, good. All right, thank you. And Alice, if you'll come up and have our prayer really quick. Come on this side so we don't disconnect the camera.
Sorry. Dear Jesus, thank you for this day. Let us have a good rest of the day. And thank you for blessing this school and keeping everyone healthy, and that we can do good on all our tests. In Jesus' name, pray. Amen.
Amen. Just slide through. All right. So this morning, I wanted to tell you guys a story that I read. I have a couple of books that I really enjoy from the guys who were in the band DC Talk. And this one is called Under God. And it has a lot of stories in it about American history and how the authors of this particular book see God's hand in the history of our country. This particular story happens in the 1700s, and I'm going to do, you guys probably have watched a movie sometimes where maybe they start at the end, and then they cut back, and you go to the beginning and see what happened, and that's what I'm going to do. We're going to start at the end of this particular story. In 1770, there was a Native American chief who had to get to a spot in Pennsylvania. And he dressed up in his best clothes because there was a gentleman there he wanted to meet. 15 years earlier, he had met this gentleman, but it was in the middle of a battle. And when he came 15 years later to meet this young man, here's what he had to say. I am a chief and a ruler over my tribes. My influence extends to the waters of the Great Lakes and to the far blue mountains. I have traveled a long and weary path that I might see this young warrior of the great battle. It was on the day when the white man's blood mixed with the streams of our forests that I first beheld this chief. I called to my young men and said, mark yon tall and daring warrior. He is not of the redcoat tribe. He has an Indian's wisdom, and his warriors fight as we do, himself alone exposed. Quick, let your aim be certain, and he dies. Our rifles were leveled, rifles which, but for you, knew not how to miss. 'Twas all in vain. A power mightier far than we shielded you. Seeing you were under the special guardianship of the Great Spirit, we immediately ceased to fire at you. I am old and shall soon be gathered to the great council fire of my fathers in the land of the shades. But ere I go, there is something bids me to speak, and the voice of prophecy. Listen, the Great Spirit protects this man and guides his destiny. He will become the chief of nations, and a people yet unborn will hail him as the founder of a mighty empire. I am come to pay homage to the man who is the particular favorite of heaven and who can never die in battle. He was talking about a young man, like I said, he had met 15 years earlier in 1755. Now, in my house, you guys here at DCA, you know, Mrs. Simmons is the math teacher. Mr. Simmons does history, PE, and Bible. But one of the things I love about history is its messiness and its chaos. And yet in all of that, as we'll see as we're looking at this story, there is order. And it's there, you just have to look really hard. What Mrs. Simmons likes about math is it's very orderly. Numbers do exactly what they're supposed to do, and they don't do other things. But history, you know, in our country this week, or last week, right, we had some events that we look at and go, oh my. But if we look back, this particular class, the 8th graders asked me last year, why do we have to learn history? And part of the reason we have to learn history is because it helps us to see the order that can come from that chaos and that messiness. And it also helps us to see where other people have made mistakes and learn from those and try to avoid those things. Now, Haley read for us earlier Psalms 91:7 that says 1,000 shall fall, 10,000, right? And nothing will happen to you. In the 7th and 8th grade room, we just finished a book called 1,000 Shall Fall, which is about the Hassel family who were in Germany during World War II. And we could see as we read through this book, God's hand and all the chaos that Hitler was causing and the Russians and the Allies all coming in. There's order in that chaos. You could see God's hand working with the Hassel family. So, going back to our story here, 15 years before, now if you have been a student in my classroom or you're a student in my classroom now, you know when my tongue tries to speak Spanish, it doesn't always work correctly. So the good news is my tongue is not discriminatory. Some of the terms I'm going to use right now are French, and my tongue is going to mess those up too. All right, so here we go. So in 1755, the colonies, we weren't the United States yet, we were fighting a war against, it's called the French and Indian War because that's who the colonists in Britain were fighting. They were fighting the French and the Indians. Now, some things that we need to know is the European way of fighting. They were used to fighting in big fields, and they were used to marching in. Remember, they had had days of swords and spears and those sort of things, and now they had muskets, and they were adapting to those things. But the way they were used to fighting is large columns and large groups of men would march. They'd face each other in a field. They'd take their guns, they'd aim each other, shoot, people would fall, they'd reload, do it again, and eventually whoever broke that particular side would lose. The European mindset was also, as I had done some studies for something else, that even if a cannonball, if you saw a cannonball coming, like you guys are playing dodgeball, what do? You dodge the ball, right? But in European times, in this colonial times where they were fighting, that was unmanly. If a cannonball was coming towards you, you didn't duck. You took it because you wanted to be a man. And so a different mindset that the Europeans were used to fighting under, that we stand, we shoot, we take the cannonballs if they're coming. The Native American way of fighting was a little different. They were like, hey, you know what? We got all these beautiful trees here in America. Let's not stand out in the open. Let's hide behind a tree and shoot our enemies that way. And the Europeans, the Britons, were, oh, this is unfair. They're cheating. They're not fighting correctly. And July 9, 1755, the British, there was about 1,500 of them. They were marching to another spot, and the French and the Native Americans showed up, and they were hiding behind trees, and they began shooting at them. The place they were at was on the Monongahela River, I think that's how you pronounce it, which was where Fort Duquesne was at that time, which was a French fort. Someone along the way got tired of trying to say those names, and the name of the city now is Pittsburgh. Okay? It was in the area where Pittsburgh is now. Because what happened as the English came in and they took the spot, they didn't want to use the French name anymore and call it Fort Duquesne, so they changed it to British name. And that happens a lot in history, right? You take a place from someone else, you rename it. So, one other thing that the Europeans didn't do is the officers were on horseback, and you could see who they were. And there was a gentleman's agreement that you didn't shoot the officers because everybody knew you didn't want to leave all these soldiers who couldn't think for themselves without a commander. So they had agreed in their battles that if they're on a horseback and they're an officer, you leave them alone. The Native Americans said, you know what? That is a really dumb way to fight. You want to make sure you can win, so take out the leaders. So they began picking off all the men on horseback. And as the story goes, this young officer that we're talking about, they were shooting at him, and twice they shot his horse out from under him. And because the other officers were being shot all around him, he just grabbed a new horse, hopped on, and kept going. One of the chiefs said, that young man, shoot him and kill him. And the braves began to fire their weapons at this particular young man. Here's what I like. There's one brave who said he fired 17 times at this young man. And he said, except for this young man, my rifle has never missed anything I shot at, but 17 times and didn't hit him. Finally, the chief said, you know what, guys? Clearly, this young man has protection. Someone he referred to as the Great Spirit does not want this young man to die. So let's stop firing at him. Let's fire at other people. So there were about 1,500 people. By the end of the day, at least 1,000 were killed or wounded. Much like our verse earlier, 1,000 shall fall. So this young man sat down later and he wrote a letter. He wrote a letter to his younger brother, and it said, as I have heard since my arrival at this place, a circumstantial account of my death and dying speech. See, because all the other officers were killed, everyone assumed this young man was killed during that time as well. And so he was setting it straight with his brother and going, hey, that's not true. I don't know why, but here in Texas, it seems like every couple of weeks or months or so, there's always on the web, there's always a thing about Willie Nelson died. And when you check and do more research, not yet. Willie Nelson hasn't died yet. But that's what happened here with this young man, is there was a rumor going around he was dead, and he was trying to let his family know that wasn't the case. I take this early opportunity of contradicting the first and of assuring you that I have not as yet composed the latter. But by all the powerful dispensations of providence, interesting, it's capitalized here, this young man refers to God as providence, the Native Americans as the Great Spirit. I have been protected beyond all human probability or expectation. For I had 2 horses shot out under me, and 4 bullet holes in my coat, and yet escaped unhurt, although death was leveling my companions on every side. So that evening of July 9, after the battle, as this young man took off his coat, he began to count the bullet holes, and he discovered 4 bullet holes in his coat, that where they were, there should have been flesh and bones underneath, and yet somehow these bullets avoided him. And this is what 15 years later this chief was saying is, God has a purpose for this young man. Now, I know we're kind of at a place where you guys are spread out all over, and so asking you this question is a little difficult. Hopefully 7th and 8th grade knows. Any idea who this young man might be? You guys online, Jason, I know you like to type things in. I'm not where I can see them, but maybe someone else can. Any ideas who this young man is? No, it's not with the book that we read. This is back in the 1700s, before there was the United States. Can you guys think of someone who became a great leader very early in this country's history? I don't have a quarter with me, but that might help. Who's on the quarter? George Washington, right? This is a story of what happened to George Washington much early in his life. He was in his 20s when he was in this particular battle, and he was fighting on the side of the British, because at that time the British and the colonies were still friends. You guys know, if you've been around me long enough, that one of my big themes is God has a plan for you. And even in the case of George Washington, when it seems like you're doomed and there's no way around it and you're going to die, God's plan is greater than any other plan or purpose that the devil has for you, and he will step in. Some of you have heard the story, and I'm not going to share it this morning, but I know the 7th and 8th grade class has, of when Mr. Simmons and his brother were little, and we think an angel saved us from the do not shop window, right? I believe that each of you here in this room and in DCA and watching online, God has a purpose for you. He designed you for this particular time. And as we read in Psalms, he plans you back when he was creating the world. 6th grade, I know you guys have heard this before too. When he was making plans for the world and saying, let there be light, before he started talking the 7 days into existence, he sat down and said, I'm going to need those students in Dallas and DCA in 2021. And he developed you for that purpose. And I'm going to read, so I read out of the Message Bible because I like it. Reads very, very well. It's a little bit different version than the King James and some of those others. I'm going to read the whole Psalms 91 to you this morning. It said, you who sit down in the high God's presence, spend the night in Shaddai's shadow. Say this, God, you're my refuge. I trust in you and I am safe. That's right. He rescues you from hidden traps, shields you from deadly hazards. His huge outstretched arms protect you. Under them, you're perfectly safe. His arms fend off all harm. Fear nothing, not wild wolves in the night, not flying arrows in the day, not disease that prowls through the darkness, not disaster that erupts at high noon. Even though others succumb all around you and drop like flies right and left, no harm will even graze you. You'll stand untouched, watch it all from a distance. Watch the wicked turn into corpses, yet because God's your refuge, the high God's your very home, evil can't get close to you. Harm can't even get through the door. He ordered his angels to guard you wherever you go. And if you stumble, they'll catch you. Their job is to keep you from falling. You'll walk unharmed among lions and snakes and kick young lions and serpents from your path. If you'll hold on to me for dear life, says God, I'll get you out of any trouble. I'll give you the best of care. If you'll only get to know and trust me, call me and I'll answer. I'll be at your side in bad times. I'll rescue you, then throw you a party. I'll give you a long life, give you a long drink of salvation. Those are the words I think I want to leave you with this morning, that no matter what, even if you're in a situation like George Washington, where the odds are against you and they literally want to kill you, if God has other purposes and plans for your life, he will protect you. I like that part about you'll be able to kick young lions out of your path, and snakes. You guys know how I feel about snakes. That is fantastic. And those are the words I want to leave you with this morning. Alan, you going to have our prayer? All right, come on over. Alan's going to have prayer, and then we'll have a couple of announcements. Come on, Alan.
Okay. Dear God, thank you for this day. Help us have a good day, and thank you for this day you've given us, and you know, pray in it.
Amen. All right, so a couple of announcements. First, right, 10 miles for January. We're doing the winter waddle. This is our prize for this month. 5th grade. Isn't it awesome? Thank you guys for helping me pick this out. So make sure you're getting your mileage in. Make sure you get it tracked through your teachers. They should all have the paper to do that. The other thing is, I would like for you guys, on Monday you don't have school, right? Why? Why do you not have school on Monday? I would like for you to spend a little bit of time on Monday just looking up Martin Luther King Jr. and what he means to this country and what he was trying to do with unifying the diversity of this country. I think you have the day off school for a reason, not just because your teachers are nice, which we are, but there's a purpose behind that day. And maybe if we all spend a little bit of time looking at Martin Luther King and how he planned to change the world, maybe we can follow that example and change our world and make it a better place. So no school Monday. Your assignment is do a little research on Martin Luther King. And then Gene Day, the next Gene Day is Wednesday, January 27th. And it's a $2 Gene Day, and the money helps support our awesome senior class. All right, that is it. You guys have a great day, and we will see you hopefully Tuesday, those of you that aren't here at school and planning on coming back. And have a great day. Bye-bye.